Hello, welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. My name is Jason, speaking to you here in my basement in the great state of Kansas. And today we're going to talk about my 5th favorite album all time on my, as I'm counting down my 100 favorite albums, I'm up to number 5. So this is a pretty big one for me. It's one I've talked about quite a bit on the channel and other channels. I absolutely love this album. That is Band on the Run, which came out in 1973 by Paul McCartney and Wings. So yeah, very excited to talk about this album. A huge, of course, being a huge Beatles fan, also a huge Paul McCartney fan. This is my favorite Paul McCartney album and some of my favorite songs from him. So this will be a fun one to talk about. A lot of interesting history behind the album as well. So let's get to it here on Jason the Old Millennial. Hello everybody, hope everybody's doing well here on a Thursday afternoon. It's actually very stormy outside. I heard thunder just a little bit ago. So we're having a bit of a thunderstorm day here in Kansas, which is pretty common at this time of the year here in Kansas. A lot of thunderstorms, of course, and we get tornadoes and stuff like that, which is the unfortunate part living here in the Midwest. And I actually was feeling really sick this week. In fact, Tuesday, I came down with some kind of stomach bug and I was feeling really awful Tuesday. And I started feeling better Wednesday, but wasn't completely well enough. I kind of just stayed in bed and drank water, you know, and then today I was able to get out of bed and really move around and actually eat some solid food for the first time, even though my stomach still doesn't feel hungry. Like I still don't feel like eating that much. I've eaten very little today and nothing like the last 2 days. So it's very strange right now. I'm still a little tired, but luckily I'm feeling better anyways. And I'm glad I got over that because man, that was really terrible Tuesday. So unfortunately I was hoping to do some more videos this week, but because I got sick, it kind of delayed me on doing some videos. So that's why I'm now coming up to doing this video, which I was kind of hoping to do either Tuesday or Wednesday. But yeah, getting down to my top 100 favorite albums, getting to my top 5 favorite albums. So we're really getting down towards the end of this list that it's taken me like over 2 years to do this list. And my list has changed drastically since then. So I think it might be another year. I might have to do this list again, to be honest, but in a different format maybe. But anyways, but yeah, number 5, I talked about Band on the Run by Paul McCartney and the Wings. Great album cover here, and man, what an amazing album. So glad I bought this on vinyl on my birthday when I turned 40. In fact, this is one of those albums I really wanted on vinyl. It's one of the most, important albums to me anyways. Like I said, this is interesting. This is the 3rd studio album for Paul McCartney and Wings since he started the band Wings. It's Paul McCartney's 5th studio album in total since he left the Beatles. This is his 5th album that he came out with in 1973, which the Beatles broke up in 1970. So in just about 3-year span or 4-year span, he's already coming out with his 5th album. So he's really prolific here during this time period, really coming out with a lot of material. So when this album came out, I talk a little bit about maybe the history of this album. I think it's very interesting. I've read a lot about it. I got this book on a bookshelf, dating McCartney's solo career basically from 70 to 73, those first 3-4 years. And this is the last album they talk about in the book that he made in 1973 anyways. So it talks a lot about, of course, making of this album, and done a lot of research on it, and I've listened to it so many times. Of course, like I said, 1970, the Beatles kind of broke up, and Paul McCartney came out with his first album, McCartney, or I don't know, you want to call it McCartney 1 now since there's 3 of them, but just called McCartney. That one did okay. It's a little raw. It's definitely got a lot of filler. It felt like a lot of songs that he had written during the Beatles time that he was kind of retreading out for the album. and not a lot of new material except for like Maybe I'm Amazed was of course really great. But then his second album he did with Linda, Paul and Linda McCartney, Ram. I don't know if that did very well when it first came out. It's considered now one of his best albums, and it's one of my favorite Paul McCartney albums. It's a really good album, Ram, the second album he came out with. And then he starts the band Wings after Ram. He kind of wanted to have his own band like the Beatles, I guess, in a sense, except for he's obviously the leader of the band because he's a Beatle, he's a former Beatle. So no one's going to trump a former Beatle. So obviously he has all the power in the band, but he wanted to have somewhat of a band atmosphere because he loved that about being with the Beatles. And he wanted to go back to, playing live. He hadn't played live for a long time because they stopped touring in 1966. The Beatles hadn't done any touring, and only live performance, I guess you can say, was the rooftop concert when they did the Let It Be documentary. In 1969, I think it was, when they did that. So definitely was a good moment for him to come back and do concerts again and stuff like that. Though they weren't doing Beatles material at that time, they were just doing new material and all this, and going to like different colleges and stuff like that, and just kind of random places and playing. But yeah, so he comes up with this band. His wife Linda, he puts her on keyboards, which she's not a musician by trade. She's a photographer. A professional photographer is really how she makes her living. But he teaches her piano or keyboard, and she sings background vocals. So he put her in the band so she can travel with him, which was a good idea. And then he got a drummer named Denny Sewell, if I'm pronouncing that right. He hired him. He hired a guitarist named Henry McAuliffe, and also a guitarist named Danny Lane. Sorry, I'm forgetting in a second. Danny Lane is the other guitar player, and that was the original band of Wings. And they made their first album, Wildlife, which did not do particularly well, didn't really have any big hits on it. And then Red Rose Speedway after that, pretty quickly after that, and that didn't really have any big hits on it either, if I remember right. So they were kind of somewhat disappointing for the first couple of albums, and people were kind of waiting for that really big, Paul McCartney, obviously a huge name after the Beatles, so you're expecting something big out of him. And so I think you would say he's been somewhat disappointing. I mean, he had a big hit with Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey on the Ram album, you would say, but for the most part, he hadn't had a whole lot of big hits. And then coming to Band on the Run, he was getting ready to record this. They were rehearsing it, and maybe a week or so before they were going to go record this, the guitarist, Henry McAuliffe, quit the band. And Paul and Henry have been kind of bickering back and forth. They haven't got along a whole lot during the tenure. Henry was a bit of a drinker and a bit of a loudmouth sometimes, and got into it. And there's a lot of arguments over Linda being in the band because Linda wasn't really a musician, and there's some complaints about nepotism or something. I don't know what you want to call it, having her in the band. Which, of course, you can imagine Paul was a little defensive about having someone attack his wife anyway. So there's definitely some issues there. Henry quits, which almost probably wasn't too big a surprise for Paul. But it was manageable because he still had Paul McCartney can play guitar just about as good as anybody else. He can play lead very easily, and he still had Denny Lane, who plays guitar. But like a day before they were leaving to record, their drummer, Denny Sewell, the other Denny, he quit the band unexpectedly. That one was a bit of a surprise and really upset Paul because he was not expecting that, and he really, kind of needed the drummer. Was something he really needed to record, and so that was a big hit for him. Denny, I think again just wasn't liking the atmosphere of the band and a lot of the drama that was going on, and he quit. So you had Paul McCartney, Lynn McCartney, and Danny Lane left. And also, it's interesting where they went to record a lot of the music. They went to Lagos, Africa. And the reason being that Paul decided, hey, let's go to somewhere exotic, somewhere different to record the album. And so he asked, where are some EMI recording studios? I guess around the world they have different recording studios that the company owns. And he saw that they had one in Lagos, if I'm pronouncing it right, Lagos, Africa. In fact, Ginger Baker, the drummer for Cream, had recorded music there as well. So he wasn't the first one to go over there, but he decided, let's go to this, exotic location. I guess you can call it Lagos, Africa. Record all this, be a fun adventure kind of thing, and just them three. So it's not really. It's called, it's Paul McCartney and Wings, but it's really Paul McCartney and then Danny Lane and Melinda along with them. It doesn't really feel like much of a band. It felt like mostly Paul doing a lot of the heavy lifting here, because Paul had to do most of the lead guitar work plus the bass work, probably a lot of the keyboard work, and the drumming, because he didn't have time to hire another drummer, so he had to do a lot of the drumming, which he's not a great drummer by trade, but he is somebody who's, Paul McCartney to me is like the most gifted musician I think there's ever been. His ability to master different instruments so well and so quickly. He knew enough to play the drums that he could, get by, I guess, in another sense. So he was able to do that. Obviously, Denny Lane was able to. He's more the rhythm guitar player, so he was able to put on guitar stuff as well. And Linda could put some keyboard, but wasn't the keyboard player that, of course, Paul was. But anyway, so they flew to Lagos, Africa, and it turned out to be not a very good studio. But what do you expect out of a third world country, Africa? Yeah, they don't have the infrastructure, the economy and all that. And it's definitely made much different than, being in America or Great Britain or whatever recording. So it was not the greatest experience for them. The atmosphere was not that great. I think in the long run, it was quite a mistake to go to Africa to record your music. I wouldn't recommend it at that time. I don't know about today, but this is, of course, like I said, 1973 or whatever that they're doing this. Anyway, so they go and they record it. They only had an 8-track tape instead of 16, so they had to do a 16 track. They had to do it 16 track or something when they got back to the Great Britain. But and the studio wasn't that great, and it was very hot and all this. And one of the major things happened is Paul and Linda were walking outside after recording, and they got robbed. Bunch of guys in a car, I think, stopped by and robbed them at knife point, and took some of the recordings they had and some lyrics that they had and all that, and very well could have died. That could have been. I always think how crazy that. That would have been the most tragic story. Paul McCartney would have been the first Beatle to get murdered. Even before John, and only 4 years after the breakup, and he's got lucky, and they decided not to kill him, and they ran off anyways. And they were told not to walk around after at nighttime, because it was very dangerous in that area. And they're like, well, we've walked around New York City at night and had no problems, and surely we can do it here. And very bad idea anyways, getting robbed anyways. But yeah, so all kinds of issues occurred, but they recorded some music there and eventually came back to Great Britain and finished a lot of the recordings and all that, and overdubs or whatever, and all that. So with I think the help of George Martin, and they completed the album. So with all you think with all that issues going on with the band, and all the trouble they went through, how could you make such a fantastic album? Which is just beyond me. How they still, that's just how good Paul McCartney was and the genius of Paul McCartney, and then just he had come up with some of the best music at that time. And he still, through all those troubles, was able to put together just a masterpiece album. Like I said, number 5 on my list. It's a 10 out of 10 album. Every song I think is great on here. It's one of those albums where I listen to every song. I think is really, really good. To me, there's not a bad song on here. What's interesting, this album came out and it started off not like particularly great. Like it did fine. It started off at number 9 in the UK, number 7 in the US. So it charted top 10 or whatever, but what sounds like from my research is that they didn't put any singles out at the time, and so they didn't have any hit singles off of the album. And after the album came out, and then when it came up to 1974, they put out 2 singles off the album, Band on the Run and Jet were kind of the two big singles, which are definitely two big songs off of this album, especially Band on the Run. That's definitely Paul McCartney's signature song, most well-known song, considered one of the greatest songs, and my favorite, probably Paul McCartney song of all time, or at least definitely up there. And when you look at, if you go to a concert, I mean, Band on the Run's going to be played. Jet's going to be played too. I mean, those are two songs that you're always going to hear at a concert. You have to hear those two. But yeah, Jet, it went number 7 in both the US and UK, so a top 10 hit there. Then Band on the Run went number 1 in the US and number 3 in the UK. So Band on the Run was a huge, huge hit of a song. There's also a song that came out that wasn't on the album called Hell on Wheels, which I know some people think it should be on this album. It's funny, I've never heard that song still to this day. I never listened to that song because it's on an album. And I should listen to it at some point, but I know a lot of people really like that song. It did pretty well though. It went number 10 in the US and number 12 in the UK. It was a single that came out that didn't appear on the album. But with the strength of those two songs, though, Jet and Band on the Run did very well. The album actually rose in the charts and went number 1 I think both UK and US. I think if I remember right, it reached like number 1. And in fact, it was one of the best-selling albums of 1974. So that year, it did very, very well. Thanks to those singles doing so well. And today, it's considered one of the best albums, and it's on a lot of lists of great albums. Rolling Stones put it at number 418, which seems very, very low. I mean, it should be top 100 for sure, I think. So Rolling Stone's not the greatest, at ranking things, I think, because this should be way, way higher. But yeah, it's definitely got received very well critically, and I think it's considered one of their, by most Paul McCartney fans, it's considered, top 5 album, top 3 album for him, if not number 1 in total. And just talking about some of the songs, I mean, Band on the Run is just an epic song, it's almost like 3 songs in one. And it kind of comes from the fact that he was, at the end of the Beatles, he was in a lot of these meetings, and there's some fighting going on between the Beatles with the management. And, when that song says, stuck inside these 4 walls, he was talking about being in meetings and just being, I hate being in meetings too. Meetings always suck, but I'm stuck inside these 4 walls, been here forever, whatever, just how terrible it is being in a meeting. It's kind of how that starts. And then Band on the Run is like him being free from all that, which really comes out towards the end of that song. But anyways, like I said, Jet, great rock song. He played both of these in the concert I saw him in 2017. Bluebird is an amazing acoustic guitar song, up there with Blackbird, one of those songs that he's so good at picking, the acoustic guitar picking, he is really good at, and some great backing harmonies. I mean, it is a really good song. Mrs. Vanderbilt, I think, is actually really good. Not one of the better ones on the album, but still a solid song. Let Me Roll It, what a great rock song, great rock riff that Paul McCartney does, and he does this live as well in his concerts. And then that's side 1. Side 2, Moonia it's such a nice sounding song, really great harmonies, really catchy. It's amazing. No Words is the only song that was co-written by Denny Lane, which Denny Lane died just a year ago, unfortunately. You can see him here on the back picture. Denny Lane, just passed away. He co-wrote that with Paul anyways. All the other songs were co-written by Paul and Linda, by the way, but No Words, really great. Picasso's Last Words, Drink to Me, is considered maybe the worst song on here. I still think it's really catchy, and it's a fun song, and it even has a interesting history behind it, where he was at a party and Dustin Hoffman was there, and Dustin Hoffman said, could you really write a song out of nowhere or something like that? I forget, I'm paraphrasing the story, but he kind of said, could I point to something and could you write a song about it, kind of thing. I think Paul McCartney was it was almost like a challenge to Paul McCartney's songwriting ability, and he said yeah. And so he pointed to an article in a newspaper magazine about Picasso, the famous painter, had passed away, and his last words were "drink to me." That was his dying last words, I guess. And so Dustin Hoffman pointed at that, can you write a song about that? And what McCartney does, he takes the song exactly like it's called Picasso's Last Words, "Drink to Me." So he takes those exact words and makes a song out of it and puts it on one of my favorite albums of all time. And I think it's actually quite a good song. I think it gets a little more hate than it should deserve. And then you end with 1985. What an amazing, I mean, when you think about Band on the Run's a great opener, 1985 is a great closer. And my story behind this to me, for me personally, is when I saw Paul McCartney in concert back in 2017. And I wasn't real familiar with any of his albums, really, a couple of them, but I wasn't like, and I was a big Paul McCartney fan, but I didn't listen to albums. I listened to singles mostly at that time in my life. I just recently kind of got more into albums, listening to albums in the full. And so I didn't know a lot of the deep cuts on these albums. And in the concert, he said, true Wings fans will know the song. And he starts playing 1985, and I was not familiar with that. I wasn't a true Wings fan at that time, so I was like, this is a song that, so it sounded like, he made it sound like this was an important song, or this was a popular song amongst Wings fans. And he starts playing 1985, and it was great. And I was like, wow, this is such a great song. Didn't know it came off this album, Band on the Run. And then later when I started listening to their albums, and I got to Band on the Run, of course, like, oh yeah, I remember him talking about this being like, almost like a deep cut Wings song that real true Wings fans will real enjoy. And he wasn't lying. It's definitely one of the best songs on the album. Anyways, I'll get into even more detail here. But yeah, overall, I mean, Paul McCartney, masterpiece album, great pop music, and some rock music as well, some good rock guitar in it. But it's just Paul McCartney's writing ability, his vocals are amazing, still some really good harmonies in here. And just really good, like I said, really good catchy pop music, which is what I really enjoy. Anyways, and that's why it's my number 5 favorite album of all time. I'm gonna get to my top 3 favorite songs on the album. Number 3, I'm going with 1985, The Closer. Yeah, this is definitely one that rose up after I, saw him in concert, and then I came back to this song, and I was like, man, it is so good. The piano is so great. The dun 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 dun. Such a great piano riff, and good rock vocals, kind of by Paul McCartney. Really kind of upbeat piano piece, and then it slows down, and then they do this they do this like ooh thing in harmony, and the harmonies are so good, and the piano is great too, and it slows down, and it's very beautiful, and you're like, wow. And then all of a sudden it goes right back into that piano riff, bum 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 bum. It goes right into that riff again, and you're right into the song again, and it's like, wow, I love that. It's kind of like what he does with Live and Let Die a little bit, So it's a rocker, and then it's a ballad, and then it's back to rocker. He does that with this, and it's just a brilliant song. And like I said, the harmonies are just amazing, vocally, instrumentally, really great song, 1985. I'd say more of a deep cut on the album maybe, but man, one you definitely need to check out if you haven't heard it. Number 2 is Jet, obviously one of the big hits on the album. And seeing this concert, it was great. Like, Paul McCartney sounded really great singing the song. I mean, even at, 75 years old, whatever he was at the time when I saw him in concert, I think. Man, it's so catchy. It's got a good guitar riff. Boom, 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 boom. I mean, it's just a great intro. And then I just love the when they yell Jet, ooh, Jet. Like the way they yell out Jet and then the oohs, it's so good. And yeah, the guitar is just amazing throughout the song. Really, it's so catchy. It's just a really fun song to listen to. So I have Jet number 2. And then number 1, I got Band on the Run. It's the obvious one, but it is one of my favorite Paul McCartney songs of all time, and my favorite from the Wings era for sure. Like I said, I love how it starts with very soft with the stuck inside these 4 walls. Near, 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 near. Like, it starts off so cool, so like a ballad kind of thing. And then it's very short. And then also we get to the second part, and the song seems like a different song altogether. And, we got to get out of here. Well, I got to be on my own, or whatever it goes. And we got to get out of here. And so it's a little more upbeat, but it's not the final song. And that's kind of short too. But we got these little instrumental interludes between 3. It's like a 3-part, song. And we get little interludes in between instrumentally, which is so great. And then we get to that third part, which is the longest part, and it's the kind of the main part of the song, which is so interesting that it's just a unique style of writing. You see it in stuff like Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, Stairway to Heaven does it a little bit. Bohemian Rhapsody might do it a little bit, in the sense where the song changes into something completely different from the beginning. And I absolutely love that, the way it changes into that third act. And we get that acoustic guitar in there, and then we get the main main chorus of Band on the Run, Band on the Run. And just great vocals from Paul McCartney again. And just a really fun, upbeat song at the end there that's so fun to sing to and listen to. And definitely highlight when I heard it in concert. Still, to this day, I think about that. Oh, it was so fun getting to see Paul McCartney sing that song live. And yeah, it's always been one of my favorites, and it probably always will be. The title of the album, Band on the Run. But yeah, so that's my top 3. Definitely got to check those songs out. If you haven't, checked this album out. It is amazing. And that's number 5, Band on the Run, 1973, Paul McCartney and Wings. So please feel free to comment. What do you think about this album? Is it high on your list as well? What's your favorite song off of it? I love to read any comments you have, and I appreciate any comments you give me. I really do. And we're getting down to we're only got 4 more left, so we're almost done with this series after 2.5 years of doing this, it seems like. So excited to get down to the bottom here, and really excited to get to talk about this album for sure. So great. Anyway, so yeah, thank you to everybody who's watching this video. Thank you for liking it, and thank you to all my subscribers for supporting the channel. I appreciate you all, and hope you have a good day.